Call to order the regular meeting of the school board for Monday, January 5th, 2026. First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Invite you to stand as you're able. Before we go on to 1A, we're attempting to reach board member Manley by telephone. We'll keep you apprised if we do have him in the meeting. 1A, the reading of our school board meeting norms. Dr. Lund.
Thank you. Number 1, be prepared. Number 2, be on time. Number 3, value and respect each other. Number 4, exercise thoughtful deliberation and conversation. Number 5, be professional at the board table and when visiting the general public. Number 6, speak up when the norms are not being followed. And number 7, advocate on behalf of students and keep the community in mind.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, the approval of tonight's agenda. I would seek a motion to approve the agenda as outlined in your board packet. It's been moved by Mr. Larson. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Clevin. We'll take a roll call vote.
Larson? Yes. Palmasino?
Yes.
Clevin?
Yes.
Lund?
Yes.
Manley is absent. Anderson?
Yes.
Hodak?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Berger?
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no, 1 absent.
Motion passes. Item 3, our public comment period. I do not have any public comment cards turned in. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak at tonight's meeting? Moving on then to 4. 4A will be a recap of our last board retreat on December 12th, 2025. Mr. Baumbach, do you want to kick this off for us?
So thank you, President Berger. December 12th, as you mentioned, the board did meet at the First Presbyterian Church with a number of other administrative leaders to continue the conversation around the budget realignment. It went a little bit further into depth, but did not fully articulate all concepts that are being discussed, but talked about a number of ones in particular. So administration first provided an update on some of those developing concepts to date before going into more presentations provided by directors and principals who led conversations around the following concepts. There was a conversation around building orientation. If it were to change from K5 across the district, 2 paired sets of buildings being a K to 2 and a 3 to 5 building was discussed. Charging a fee for regular education busing again it was done years prior, but not in recent years. That was discussed. Low enrollment courses were discussed. Credits required for graduation was discussed. North Dakota Centers for Distance Education and the impact it has on our budget was discussed. Student technology and the concept of maintaining a 1-to-1 device-to-student ratio was discussed. Elementary intramurals was discussed at some length. Curriculum adoptions were discussed. Class sizes were discussed as well. And finally, with the assistant and associate superintendent position was discussed at some length as well. So just wanted to provide a highlight. There are documents posted. The actual slide deck that was used is on the school district's website, as well as linked into the board memo here. And the very next step here would be a week from now, a special board meeting, getting into a lot more detail on January 12th about an administrative recommendation to address the budget realignment.
Thank you. Before we open this up for discussion, just a quick bit of news that Mr. Manley has now joined the meeting by telephone. Any board members wish to comment about that particular board retreat, the budget realignment process, anything you wish to discuss? Again, there's no action required tonight, but this is an opportunity to continue the conversation forward as we look ahead to next Monday, January 12th. So I'll open it up for conversation. Mr. Palmasino?
I just have a quick question. Are you saying on the 12th we will get either a layout of what proposing cuts the administration are looking at after all our discussion?
Yes, the January 12th board meeting is intended to get a lot more detailed and more specific, so a list of items that would add up to that goal of 4.4, just over that.
Other board members? Thank you. Dr. Hodek?
I would like to have at that meeting as well a handout, so I could physically have that in my hand, regarding what Grand Forks Public School requires for graduation requirements, what the state requirements are. I mean, I'm pretty well versed in it, but I think some things have changed, as well as what North Dakota scholarships require from the students. Thank you.
Did I see Mr. Clevin? Is that correct? Yep, and then we'll go to Mr. Palmasino.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to point out that when you follow the link in the agenda to the information from the December 12th board retreat, the presentation is in that link. So all that's accessible from the publicly identified website.
Yep, and before I go to Mr. Palmasino, the key words here on the district website are budget realignment process. If anyone's listening and looking for the information, wanting to dig in, there's an FAQ on that landing page as well. I know sometimes if you don't have the link in front of you, you're sort of like, well, where would I start? So of course it's gfschools.org /GFPS budget realignment process. But those would be the keywords. Mr. Palmasino?
Yeah, just to piggyback on the what's required, if we could get maybe the top 5 school districts also on a sheet of paper, so we could look at how we compare. Because I know we went through them once, and talked about it, but it'd be nice to have it in writing.
President Berger, just
please.
a question for clarification, and you're talking specifically to the graduation requirements? Thank you.
Other board members? Ms. Flynn?
At the time that we'll receive the documents, well, at the table, or when we're having the meeting, will that information with the proposed realignment ideas be shared with teachers? Can you talk about that timeline?
Do you have that, Dr. Brenner?
Sure. We both do. Actually, all 4 of us do. Yes, actually, that information will be in the board packet that will go out on Thursday, late afternoon. And anybody who may be affected, and I say maybe because when we're talking about broader concepts like a content area, it may not be a specific person, but it will affect a person at some point, if we don't have enough resignations or retirements. So the answer is yes, our principals will be meeting with applicable folks this week before the board packet goes out Thursday, late afternoon.
Did you have anything else to that, Ms. Flynn? Okay. I want to make sure we don't miss Mr. Manley. Do you have anything for this conversation?
Thank you, President Berger. Nothing to add at this time.
Others in the room for discussion? Okay. Anything else, Mr. Bombach, before we move on? Does that feel like the level you wanted to get to for tonight?
Yep, just definitely wanted to point out that the meeting happened and there's more information online and you can always find it there.
Thank you. Again, to reiterate, an item for discussion only, so we'll move on to 4B. Payment in lieu of taxes, otherwise known as pilot discussion. Dr. Brenner?
Sure, I'll kick this off. Thank you, Mr. President. So the purpose of tonight's agenda is really to engage the school board in a non-actionable and philosophical discussion, conversation around taxes in lieu of, or pilot, otherwise known as pilots. I know the board has struggled in the past over some of the pilots that have been brought before the board, some that have economic impact, maybe all are perceived to have economic impact. Sometimes they have, influence on the school district, school enrollment, i.e. apartment buildings. Sometimes something like a Gristo would probably not, but may actually help us in the future, just from a funding perspective. But everybody has a different perspective and a different philosophy. There's nothing that this board can do at this time to change the process, because it's enacted in law. But you might have a better understanding of each other and where you're all at in terms of how you would like, the process to proceed. The mayor has spoken about the possibility of getting the three governing entities together in advance, whole boards, portions of the whole board. It's not clear to me, what that might look like, what that structure might look like. But nonetheless, I think the conversation is really important for this group. And really thinking, from my perspective, it would be, when a pilot comes forward, what's the impact on students? What's the impact on learning? What's the impact on our enrollment in our neighborhood schools? So with that, I would just turn it back over to you, Mr. President, for board conversations.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to talk generally about this process without any particular interested party in front of us, because sometimes those questions, those comments become more pointed, or this applies in this specific circumstance. So we'll just start by opening it up to board members. Generally speaking, as you looked through, and this is a draft of a rubric, this is something we could consider. What stood out to you? How might it be used? How have you reflected on this possibility, knowing that, as Dr. Brenner alluded to, at this point, we can't change the process, but we could, for example, discuss how we might respond generally to these in the future. So, Mr. Clevin?
I don't think the process of how we reach a decision is a century code issue. Certainly it's century code issue that we have to take an action upon the request. But my reflection on this is, I think the process that we do community-wide is the thing that needs refinement. And that's kind of when the last time this came in front of us, when we did have a specific request. And then there's some follow-up, maybe unofficially, in individual conversations. It was get the city and the county and the school board together to revisit the process itself. To me, that's much more important than having some rubric that we check boxes off. Is refining the process, getting it where we're all collectively involved much sooner than we are now, where it often is kind of a say yes, say no, and either way, it's kind of too late to really have impact on the discussion. That's my interpretation of how I feel when these come to us. So again, get us involved earlier. And that's something I think the mayor kind of voiced here in this very room.
Thank you for that. Dr. Lund, did I see your?
Just an addendum to Jay's. There is a statement in Century Code that says, once we get the letter, we have 30 days to respond. Now, it can be yes, no, or we want to negotiate, but it is in Century Code that we have to respond within 30 days. If we don't, that's taken as a yes, we accept it.
Yeah, Mr. Clevin?
And my point wasn't that there's no statutory limits. It's a Century Code doesn't say exactly how the process has to go. That was the point.
Others wish to weigh in? Mr. Larson?
Yeah, I think to add on to Jay's, when we're not involved in the process and it comes with you have to say yes or this project dies, that doesn't feel like negotiation. Which is why, maybe this is a project the city and the county are like, heck yeah, we're going to do this thing. But the school's like, I don't care one way or another. Would we have to then, to support the city and the county? Maybe the answer is yes. Have to go along with this thing just because they want it, even though the school's like, hey, I'd rather have the 90 grand a year in tax revenue. And it's like the timing of this last request was tricky for me because we're talking about making cuts because we don't have enough money, and then also giving a tax break, presumably to someone who's going to make money. And those are the kinds of things that if we're involved earlier and a project comes forward and is like, this is really good, and the city says, yeah, I really like this one, I'm willing to do 100% waiver of any city owed taxes, and the county says, I'm close, but maybe 75, and the school says, I'll give you a 20% break, but I want more. We need some more because we're going to have burden associated with that project. And it's hard to do it until, maybe this is just too hopeful of a, communication and strategy, but it's where I'd like to see it, because on a project like this, maybe we do get a little more than what the city would be getting. So that's just my thought, that this doesn't feel like it's negotiation or anything of the sorts.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask a general question to anyone who might know this answer. Do we have an actual yes or no about whether two agencies sign off and one says we're not willing to participate? Do we know what that next step would look like? Dr. Lund, do you have that answer? Mr. Baumbach, do you have that answer?
Yeah, President Berger, the way that this has been understood, I don't have a document in front of me, but it's the opinion that if 2 of 3 decide to move forward and the third does not, then the 2 tax abatements would still be in play and the third would not, that portion of it, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you. Others? Mr. Palmasino?
I guess what I made the point last time, I would like to see us being able to negotiate with the developer prior to us having to say yes or no. You know, and I think the last one, I would supported it because it's for low income, and Terry Hansen was here, who oversees a lot of the low income apartments, and I have a lot of respect for Terry. But I think at one time, it may be a negotiation, and I'm not sure if this would ever work, that the school district may say, hey, we'll go 50-50. And the county may say, we'll go 70, and the city can go 100%, because the city's going to benefit from sales tax as soon as the first shovel hits the ground. You know, so that's, I hate to get to the point where we say, no, but we want to negotiate. It would be nice to negotiate, because we've said no to 2, we've negotiated with 2 of them, and they've adjusted both of them. You know, so it would be nice to sit down with those people, whether it's all 3 groups or one at a time, and say, here's the best we can do, and here's why.
Thank you. Others? Mr. Larson, and then I'll come to Dr. Lund.
And maybe just a late apology to Brennan for putting him on the spot last time. I didn't mean to do it like that, but I am interested in the district's position on this from a business standpoint of, you know, I'd like to say yes to this, but by golly, I'd really like that 90 grand. That kind of thing is where, from when you guys are meant, or you're here to do the business, if you think this is a good deal and it overall is going to balance out in students' favor, great, I can support that, but that is a valuable opinion to me, both superintendent and others, so.
Thank you. Dr. Lund?
Just a question about Bill's comments, and I'll read from, this is from state law. During the negotiation of the option to make payments in lieu of taxes, the city shall include non-voting ex officio members of its governing body and appointed by the school board, blah, blah, blah. For those of you that have served on that committee, is there a negotiation during that committee, or is it, here's what we're doing? Because this, according to state law, they're supposed to talk to us about a negotiation process, and I'm wondering, has that been happening, or is that not happening at that subcommittee level?
Mr. Palmasino, do you want to?
Yeah, I've been on, and there isn't. It just, the first time it's presented, you know, that through the bodies, and we just move it on. And you really can't negotiate because there's just 2 people, and they have not spoken to the rest of the board about that process. And that's where you really need the whole board involved with the negotiations, and 2 people prior to even coming to the board.
Others? Dr. Lund?
Another comment, and then I'll shut up too, actually, man, I'll shut up. One of the comments I heard about is, well, let's get the 3 taxing entities together so the developers only have to present once. I'm sorry, if they're asking for money, they can present 5, 6, 10 times. Now, if they want to present to all of us at once so we can have a discussion among all the different elected members, that's fine. I would be very opposed to having one meeting and then we sit down and we have to decide at that meeting. I think if it's an informational thing and we want to find out, well, what does the city think about this? What does the county? What does the school board? That's great, but I would be very opposed to, well, we're going to have one meeting for the convenience of people so that the people that are for it and against it only have to present once. I don't think that's a good process at all. And then the other thing, and I read this a while back, and I don't know if it's still happening, but in the forum one day, the school district down there was talking about developing a policy regarding about this. And I don't know if that's something we should look at or not, or if we go with the rubric. It'd be hard to formulate a policy that can answer every single different angle, but I don't know if we should be looking at developing a school board policy for this or not, and I'll just leave that to the administration to ponder. But I know Fargo was, at least in December, they were talking about developing a policy regarding this.
Yeah, it's a great point, Dr. Lund. You know, the markets change all the time, and all of the variables, you know, the sandbox changes all the time. So something like that would have to be continually revisited. Yes, more generic, and perhaps, you know, rather than a specific policy, some sort of minimum, you know, and I'm just thinking out loud here, you know, the school board, you know, and again, I'm just one person thinking out loud, that's why it's for discussion, not action, you know, would not accept less than X number of years, right? I mean, that's just the threshold, and then, you know, those are the ones that get heard. I mean, that's a possibility that I think, you know, is worth entertaining. I want to go to Mr. Manley to make sure that we don't ignore the gentleman on the phone. So, Mr. Manley, do you have anything to add?
Nothing to add at this time. Thank you very much.
Yes, Ms. Flynn?
I agree with what Dr. Lund said. I think part of some of the issues that we've had in the past related to the process has been when it comes to us, it was kind of like the final thing, and the developer was nowhere to be found. And we had a lot of questions, and it's like, this is a significant amount of money that you would be getting, and you're not even showing up to have a conversation, let alone did they reach out prior. And so I think the idea of having all of the entities together could serve us well for us to understand each other's perspective. So when we talk about something like a sales tax, if the city council is deciding, yeah, this is a good idea, we're looking at this budget, you know, X, Y, Z, but they also don't know the perspective of the other entities, or maybe they're not paying attention, you know, under the surface of what the issues are the school district's dealing with potentially, or the county. They can make a decision in a funnel, but unless we're there having a conversation about really how would this affect us, where would we get the money, you know, then it feels like they've gotten so far into the process, and it almost feels like we're then the ones to blame for the project not going through, because like, oh, well, we all did this, but no one even asked us to our perspective. They sent us a letter with a deadline of 30 days, and it's day 29, and we have to make a decision. And it just feels like a forced hand. And I appreciate the last pilot request, because we had the opportunity to have some of these conversations. I think that was probably one of, if not the most prepared, in terms of the information about the requests, the developer having conversations prior, coming to the table. But the reality is too, if another one came like that and the district is in a really bad financial position, I agree with what Joel said. Like, we need to be directed to say, you know, like, this is ultimately a board decision, but from my financial perspective, I would recommend that you go and negotiate, or you ask the city to do a 5%, or, you know, sometimes I think we need the direction of that overarching financial, like, what should we be doing, instead of, you know, a bunch of 9 hooligans just deciding, you know, what we think, because there's also some probably biased underneath that, right? Like, I might have a perspective based on where I live. I might have a perspective about a project based on my field. And we try to be neutral, and we try to be kind with those biases too. But there's a lot of things. This is a small town. We know people. We know they're not going to go, and they're still probably going to build the project. And so then it just becomes like a forced exercise in who's calling whose bluff. And I think that there can be some better understanding of uniting the three entities in a better way to have bigger conversations about what is really best for our community, not what's good for the city, what's good for the county, what's good for the school district, because ultimately we have to work together. Perfect example, and then I'll get off my soapbox. Probably 6 years ago, I remember thinking to myself, we were going for like one of our first asks to the public, and the city was talking about doing a sales tax, and then the county was talking about, and I was like, what if we didn't talk to each other and we all did this at the same time? Like, what would the public do, you know? And I think there were reasons other than, oh, this person's going to go first, that they didn't go to the public and ask for those. But could you imagine us asking for a referendum and then the city is asking for a sales tax increase in the county, like separately? How would you vote for that as a constituent, right? And so I think that also means that we are willing to compromise at times for the betterment of the city or the county, because maybe they need to go and make an ask, or maybe this project would benefit them in the long run and they need our support. But the lack of those conversations happening is what makes the decisions more difficult, in my opinion, because we just are not working together like we could.
Thank you. Others? Dr. Hodak?
I have some random comments here, which is usually the way I come at things and so forth. First of all, I found the framework that was developed here very beneficial. I think everyone in all three entities could use something like that and work on that as well too. I also want to acknowledge that yes, there is Century Code and we do have law, and that is the minimal that we have to follow. But I think when we're asking the city with their leadership, because it's usually directed from them, that they can maximize. And when I say maximize, they can say to developers and projects, this is what we expect before you come to us for a pilot. I think that would be very beneficial to them so that they know that and they are prepared to answer to it. One of the, with the last project that was here and so forth, that I had a really tough time with, and I kind of mentioned it to Brandon afterwards, but I was very disappointed in the fact that those developers, as well as the city, were turning their heads back to Brandon. And if you go back, Brandon was actually giving them the answers, and not necessarily just for the school, but for city numbers and taxpayers' numbers and things like that. So I cautioned Brandon, because there it is, it's out in the public. Brandon Bombach answered, and this is what he said. And so then that puts us in a different light, because it looks like he might be, supporting it when it's something that the district isn't with that. I also think that the part about us having a policy on that, policy locks us into so much. And so having just a best practices as the board, I think would be better. But I also think that it would be better if all three entities were looking at these things in the same way. So the county just doesn't look at it for the county. The city doesn't look at it just for the city. That they are expected to say, yes, we did consider this on the school's perspective and how this could impact them as well too. So, random comments, that's what I had.
Thank you. Others? Mr. Larson?
Just sort of to tag team off that, I from a policy or a practice, I think that I do like the idea of something that we could give, so like a Dakota Commercial, if they're putting together a package, if we said it's our practice that we don't dip below 50% and we don't go beyond 10 years. And so ask, I can't remember what it was, but I think it was 20 years and 90% or something significant. And but if we said on the front end, make your project work, not less than a 20% discount or a 50%, whatever the number is, and a shorter period of time, so we don't have an ask as big, because 2 decades, things are going to change substantially in the next year, let alone the next 20. So to think that this is a necessary thing and the only way that it pencils out, I voted in favor of it reluctantly, but I don't know that I'd do it again, as I'll say that. So if we did have some guidance that we develop or some committee develops, I do appreciate that. And then just quickly to the point about Brandon, they did look to Brandon a couple times. I took that more as Brandon's really good with numbers and he's a good rememberer, but I didn't take it as much as he's blessing this project and therefore the district is as well. So I think he's just a smart guy. That's all I took it as myself.
One comment, and then I'll go to Dr. Lund, if that's okay. Related to what you're saying, Mr. Larson, about here's the most we'll do, make it fit within, that picture. The one thing that's come up on occasion, and I don't remember which specific project, doesn't matter, is this idea of how do we know that this is the only way this project is feasible? And in some cases, maybe that's true, and in some cases, there's another developer, there's money that's found, right? So, again, a best practice to Dr. Hodek's point, give us some more assurance that this really is necessary and not just something that makes it easier or smooths the cash flow out. And I don't know what that is. This is not my field. Maybe it's more than one firm. Maybe it's, X number of dollars that's spent on vetting, that the developer is spending to vet this project, to give us the assurances. Because even if I had the time to do that kind of homework, I don't know how to do that. But is there a way, and I'm asking people smarter than me in this room, that we could have more evidence that this isn't going to happen unless we get a yes from the city, a yes from the county, a yes from the school board? I don't know who those people are who might be able to answer that. Maybe it's Mr. Clevin, maybe it's someone else, but we'll go to you first.
Well, I can't answer those questions, but I'll use the most recent one we saw. I thought the supporting materials were very accurate, very reliable, and you do have people whose job it is professionally to perform those but-for analysis. I think we need to trust that because they are professionals in that sphere. Certainly we have prerogatives to ask questions, and last time, for example, I thought we got a lot more information shared when we asked questions, but I don't think we get that same positive outcome if we don't trust the materials that we're presented with. I, for one, do trust them. I think that's a better place to start, and then ask questions to go as far as we want on asking questions, but start with trust.
Yep, thank you. Dr. Lund?
But I remember one couple back where the analysis, the independent analysis said that it can only be done with that, and we rejected it, and then they repackaged it and somehow were able to finance it a different way. That makes it hard to trust the independent people when something like that happens. And that wasn't the last one, but it was 2 or 3 before, when they say, well, this is the only way it can be done, and then, oh, by the way, we don't have to come back to you, we were able to redo it and do it with just city money. And that makes it tough, because now those of us that are on the board are going to remember that and say, well, can it truly only function that way? So maybe you do need more than one independent thing. I had a question for Joel or anybody else about, my only concern about setting minimums is, the one thing I've seen through the years is the projects have really changed. They were, the first few were truly new businesses, and so if we're going to bring a new business in that's going to generate $5 billion, and we're going to have 4,000 new employees, maybe we would want to give them 90% for 15 years versus we're having 300 apartments built over here, and it's not going to. Where's the big economic? I hate to set limits too tight that we have this great project that, oh, this would really be an economic boon not only for the community but for the school district. Because the projects have changed, and I've noticed even in Fargo they've changed. It's gone from new businesses to housing. And I understand we have a housing crisis in this state, but it makes it difficult for us entities to look at it and say, well, this is really going to be beneficial. That's my only fear about setting too stringent a limits, is what if you get a great exco that's going to bring in a couple billion and thousands of people? Well, we can't do it because we've got this standard. And just so you know, I'm not in favor of necessarily developing a policy. I just brought up the question because I noticed Fargo was doing it. I thought, well, let's talk about it.
Try a yes and, Dr. Lund. Yes, and we could potentially have a different practice for manufacturing, then from housing, then, right? I mean, so I don't want to get too deep in the woods tonight. This is just more discussion and conversation, but there are ways to recognize that we are in a different place. You know, those projects might come at us differently. Any others? Mr. Baumblach?
Thank you, President Berger. One delineation that the state often makes within different programs, support programs, is if a company meets a definition of primary sector, and there's actually a formal process for that. And so if a company makes a product that's sold far away, but the labor and all the resources are sourced locally, the state has prioritized that type of work because that can draw value in, versus a company that might not meet that primary sector definition might have the opposite effect or more neutral within your community. And so it's interesting to reflect on, but I offered to the board based on my prior experience that there is such an application at the state held by the Department of Commerce that you have to apply for, and that would be a delineation for some of the tax incentives already in place.
Thank you. That's helpful. Other comments from board members? Mr. Anderson?
I just wonder, following up to prior points, if instead of setting specific numbers to X amount of years, X amount of percentage, this is what we'll go with, if instead we could set, because it feels like, and it seems like there's been a lack of information at times, a desire for more information, desire to answer more questions, maybe have more time before having to make a decision. So if instead we could set or put an ask out there that at that 30-day mark, 30 days prior, we have all of the information, and these are the things we're looking for to be able to answer possibly our questions on the rubric. And maybe that's a part of Mayor Bochensky's piece, getting the three entities together. Maybe not, but I just wonder if that's maybe a different way to frame it, different way to look at it, have that information sooner, and be able to ask questions sooner rather than the night we're scheduled to make a decision basically on it. So, and I would say that whether the rubric's used for ourselves to reflect on and make a decision on what level impact we see it as having, or to an earlier point, maybe it's more beneficial, at least some of the categories, to understand administration's view on the impacts, long-term fiscal sustainability. What does administration see on this, and how should we be looking at it? Any further concerns we should have? So would be what I have.
Thank you. Any others? Ms. Flynn?
I just had a thought about if it continues to move forward where there is separate meetings occurring and we don't like come together and have a meeting together. One of the points that I have brought up is like, I am not responsible for seeking out like the city council agenda. Like, I don't know what I don't know. So perhaps if city council is, or the city is unwilling or just doesn't think of it, if Dr. Brenner or board leadership knows of something coming, or like members of LAGAC can pass that on to board leadership or Dr. Brenner to say, if you are available and want to attend, this is coming to city or county, or maybe that's in a Friday Focus or whatever. But I think having that information accessible to board members could be sort of on the guidelines of like, and this information is going to come from, because part of it is when there's public comment, we do have our emails available. But someone might show up and comment in public at a time that's not convenient for them when we have our meeting, or is more convenient for them. So I just was thinking about these conversations when we were talking about guidelines or like what comes, or perhaps we have something different manufacturing. And a lot of the language in here was about philosophical like thoughts and understanding. I remember, I think it was 2017 is when we started getting rumblings of the first pilot that we would have had to vote on, which was the Simplot expansion, the high bay freezer. And I, at the time, was like, HE double hockey sticks, no. Like philosophically, I do not support corporations with money coming in and asking for tax breaks. And that was the foundation of me kind of sticking my feet in the mud. But I think at that time, we didn't really have a good understanding because we'd never had to decide on these before. And we really never had an understanding of like, well, what does this mean? What does this mean for our community? What does this mean if they go elsewhere? And so I've learned a lot over that time. But I also look at like what Harwood is experiencing with a data center coming in. And, you know, philosophically, I look outward on those projects and I'm like, we're having to make infrastructure and city and county decisions as a school district. And I'm appreciative that of us being involved with, you know, understanding the projects and sharing our perspective of how it impacts students and things like that. But if like we have to make decisions about those big things and it could really impact the public, I just wonder then do we have a responsibility then to tell the public what's coming? Do we have a responsibility of putting out there in a broader way, like we are talking about this tax incentive or this pilot request, you know, because it may not be something that's like going to impact the school district much, but we have to do it because of bare minimum century code, but it might have a large impact on the community. And because we're involved, then what's our responsibility? It's just like this philosophical, ethical question is like, are we just going to have a meeting where the public doesn't really know what's going on and then we make a decision either way and it impacts them, maybe even adversely? What is our responsibility?
Thank you. Others? One more time, Mr. Manley, do you want to weigh in?
Sure. I think getting the three taxing entities together will be a great benefit. Right now, I think we're operating quite independently. You know, they might have an inkling that we're $4.5 million behind right now, but they don't know really the specifics of that. And we probably don't know any specifics of how the city is or how they're doing. It's the same with the county. So getting us all together in the same room and being able to hear each other's thoughts and ideas on pilots as they come up, and then we all can hear the same data at the same time and all that information, I think that'll be a great benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. Others? Okay. Great conversation. Again, this is just an item for discussion this evening, but has been beneficial to, again, have some space to talk about this without another request in front of us, but just to hear perspective and wonder about process, wonder about practice, because we know we'll see more of these. So appreciate that time and appreciate you leading off that discussion. And you as well, Dr. Brenner. 4C, Finance Committee report. Is this Mr. Palmasino or Mr. Baumbach? Who's taking the lead?
I can start. I think we both were at the meeting. But mainly it was just a meeting on an update of where we are in safety and security. And if you look at your handout, the memo that you did, memorandum that we did receive, we have finished, you know, quite a few. What we did on the page 4 of that deal, we put X's on the end. So people who can't follow color code can look at that very easily, that we have finished, you know, those. And I believe this week on Thursday, we're getting bids in on Central's project, I think. And then they're working towards the others. The good news was that their estimate has dropped to 17,000 or 17,283,000, which prior to it was about 18 plus. So if numbers come in the same, so they're working towards that. I think the only question mark that they had right now on moving forward with most of the projects was Phoenix, and that was mainly the city's doing a traffic study, and they're very slow at getting it done. So they don't want to create a nice entrance in the wrong spot. So they're kind of working on that one. but they will be moving forward. We'll continue to move forward, and we'll be getting more bids in so we have a very busy summer going on. And I think on the finished projects, the ones that are all complete except Wilder, which I believe they're probably doing the inside of that. And my only question on that one, I drove by today just to see how they're doing. Is there any chance soon we could open that new parking lot that they completed on that new addition? Because we have a lot of teachers parking on the street. And if you go down some of those streets, they're pretty narrow to get parked. So if we could ever get to the point where they can free up space in that new parking lot for teachers to park there, it would help with that area. So I don't know if, Brandon, you have anything to add?
Yeah, President Berger, member, Paul Messino, no, I don't have an update on that, but I'd just be happy to take that request and inquire on that one, see where that's at.
We had other committee members present. I believe Mr. Anderson, Ms. Flynn, Dr. Lunn, of course, Dr. Glatch, Mr. Bakke. I see that Daly's here as well. Any of you want to shed some light on that report? Anything that you feel like there's conversation that we should be apprised of? Mr. Baumbach?
Yeah, President Berger, the only thing I would offer, and actually, indeed, I wasn't at the meeting, so I was working from some of the documents, but had plenty of conversation around it. What's not written down here, but just to illuminate is, as we began this process, some of these projects were a little bit unknown, but I would say the difference between the first summer of projects and the second is everybody involved with the project has really kind of gotten their groove with how the design works, how the construction will work. And we designed for some of the most complicated entry sequences in the beginning of these projects. So I think to be in a budget positive situation with this overall budget, anticipated to be 18 million, and now it's quite a bit less. We're in a very good spot. We have contingencies in place, and so looking to carry out the next couple of seasons of work just to continue that good work and end on a positive budget balance.
I just had one other thing to add. We just continue to be thankful for a positive referendum result that has led to these projects. The Central Kitchen, of course, and the New Valley Middle School, which is welcoming students in the morning. So just a reminder to those listening that this is possible with the support of the public. And so just continue to be grateful for that. Anything else on this Finance Committee report? Okay, again, this is just a recommendation for discussion, so now we'll move on to the action portion of the agenda. 5A is our consent agenda. I would seek a motion to approve the consent agenda as outlined in your packet. It's been moved by Mr. Palmasino. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Clevin. We'll take a roll call vote.
Palmasino?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Lunn?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Manley?
Yes.
Clevin?
Yes.
Hodak?
Yes.
And Berger?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion passes. 5B, consideration of architectural services proposal as a building fund expense. Mr. Baumbach?
Yes, thank you, President Berger. Periodically, whenever federal funds are involved with your school district, you'll have different audits. And we had an audit here October 2nd through 4th of 2023 with the North Dakota's Career and Technical Education and NDCTE agency conducted an on-site civil rights where they were checking for no discrimination on behalf of the district related on the basis of race, color, national origin, sex, or disability. And it's not uncommon to have a few findings here, and most of those were able to be cleaned up and have been immediately cleaned up. One of the bigger ones was that they found that the rider room at Red River High School has a ramp down to the stage area that's at a slightly steeper slope than what should be the case according to 1991 ADA compliance rules. There was an addition on the building or some work done in 1993, which would have required that they bring it up to code to the newer standard of 1991, and it wasn't done at that time. And so it was cited. And so here, what you have in front of you is we started a conversation with an architectural firm and what it would take to bring that up to code. There's a proposal for their design work that you'll see attached as a not-to-exceed dollar amount of $14,200, which keeps it under bidding requirements. North Dakota law would have to bid this work out if it is in excess of $50,000. They have a proposal in front of us that could really get the construction drawings completed yet in January or more like February. Then we would go through bidding of the subcontractor's work because the actual cost of the work is expected to exceed $50,000. And then once school lets out, they'd start their work and have it finished by the end of July. And so by next fall, the scenario would be remedied. The one unfortunate thing associated with this is that we'd be giving up some seating. I forget the total dollar amount. I looked to the audience because Daly Wilkinson, our safety and security manager, is here and has been a part of the project. So she is a resource should you have any further questions for me or her on this project. But the administrative recommendation is asking that we approve the proposal of $14,200, but to specifically be paid from the building fund as it is a capital project, and it would keep it out of our general fund. That expense would be to the building fund.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Bombach or our resource person? Mr. Clevin?
There's terms and conditions attached to that, but there's some terms and language in there that I wonder if they're not standard for us, particularly indemnification. That can be a sticky wicket for agencies. And then limited liability is limited to fees only. That's relatively standard for these type of small projects. Payment for termination, the language in there talks only about lump sum or percent of cost contracts. This is neither. And then the rates are listed as through 2026, but the proposal lists rates for 2025. So, and now admittedly, these are nitpicky things because this is what I do for a day job. On the balance, it's a pretty fair proposal. So if nothing changes, then that contract's fine with our standards, then I'd certainly accept it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Manley, do you have anything?
Nothing to add, thank you.
So let me clarify one thing before I seek a motion, Mr. Clevin. Was there something you were suggesting be changed in the contract, or is there something you wanted Mr. Bombach to respond to directly?
Well, I mean, mostly just is that kind of terms and conditions consistent with all of our contracts? And maybe we just have them write a general AIA contract that we almost always use for capital projects, even if it's a small project.
Yep. Thank you, President Berger, Member Clevin. I think great points along the way here. And so what we will do, we brought this forward here as a building fund proposal. I think you're right to say let's take a little bit more due diligence here. We haven't gotten this in front of our legal yet, and we'll do that.
So is it fair to say, Mr. Bombach, that we as a board could approve this proposal for this amount to be paid out of the building fund, and some of those details would take care of themselves through the legal process?
Yeah, thank you, President Berger. Absolutely welcome the commentary and the conversation around that. So let's not assume they take care of themselves, so thank you for the commentary. But two, the request is explicit to use building fund dollars up to that amount, and so that would be really what's on the table, but I appreciate the additional guidance.
Well, I'd make a
Mr.
motion
Clevin.
to that effect.
So we have a motion on the floor to approve the proposal for up to $14,200 to be paid from the building fund. Is there a second? A second by Mr. Anderson. Any further discussion? Yeah, Dr. Lund?
I wasn't familiar with this architectural firm. Have we used this architectural firm before in the school district? And not that it matters a whole lot, but.
I don't know if we know right now, but it's a question that could easily be brought back.
Mr. Clevin, do you have something?
I know the firm. I'd vouch for their capabilities, and a project like this actually is a really nice fit.
That wasn't the question. I just we hadn't used that firm before. I wasn't questioning the architectural firm.
Mr. Palmasino, did you have something?
I think on a few smaller projects in the past, we've used this firm.
Mr. Manley, do you have any questions related to the motion on the floor?
No questions.
Anything else from board members? We'll take a roll call vote.
Flynn. Clevin.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Hodak.
Yes.
Palmasino.
Yes.
Lund.
Yes.
Manley.
Yes.
Larson.
Yes.
Berger.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Motion passes. On to 6A, announcements. Any announcements from anyone? I've been accused of taking the announcement. It must have been related to a certain school welcoming a certain student population tomorrow, but Dr. Brenner, did you want to say anything else?
It's just a great day for Valley Middle School. It's a long culmination from May of 2023 to get to where we're at tomorrow morning, so it's going to be an exciting day.
Thank you. Did you have something, Mr. Palmasino?
My only question is Dr. Brenner doesn't have to worry about the valley heating system anymore.
Vice President Anderson were over there at some point today, and there was a whole bunch of rejoicing about the heat working, and then just a few months from now, the air conditioning. So they're very mindful of the new school climate in lots of different ways. If you'll pardon the grandfather joke. Any other announcements? 6B, board requests for future consideration. Mr. Manley, I'll come to you one more time. Any announcements or board requests before we move on to our norms?
Oh, maybe just a quick thank you. I received an email the other day about the students scanning their badges when they get on and off the bus now. And that's a great security improvement, and that the parents will be able to track that, where their students are getting on the bus and getting off the bus with the app on their phones now. Really cool technology. So thanks to everybody involved with that.
Yeah, I would echo that. Thank you. The transportation being an extension of the school buildings and classroom feels like another enhancement to safety and security throughout the district. So thank you for that, Mr. Manley. On to 6C, school board meeting norms. Dr. Lund, how did we do?
Well, we didn't have any extra credit, so I could only give us 100%.
Thank you. We're adjourned.